On today's episode of the 24MX Workshop, I'm presenting to you the ProWorks Tribute Tyre Changing Stand. Now, it's a tribute because we are shouting out Jay Clark from Dirt Bike TV, who shared his knowledge with us, and they have created the tyre changing stand. Now, the best thing about this tyre changer, the first thing is it's height adjustable. Now, other tyre machines, obviously you get that awkward angle where you bent over, doing all your work, you get a bad sore back sort of thing. With this thing, you can adjust the height from 62 to 92 centimeters. So I'll show you the first step of the changing the height of the tyre changing stand. Pretty simple. This pin at the moment is set on the lowest hole, which means that's as high as it will go, which is probably comfortable for most people. But what you can do is removing this pin, you can drop the heights of where the base of the wheel will sit. So if you want to work a bit more bent over, obviously if you want to work higher up, depends on where you want to be. But we're going to take it right back up to the top. So we're going to go on the top hole, which is here. Which is best, like I said, obviously when you work on those wheels changing tyres, if you're bent over the awkward angle, after 5 or 10 minutes you end up getting a sore back. So having it higher up makes it much more comfortable for taking off those tyres and tubes. The second thing on this tyre changing machine is this 1 centimeter thick rubber disc. Now, it's rubber to prevent you from scratching your hub when obviously changing the tyres and tubes, because obviously if you were to rest the hub on the metal plate, eventually once you spin the wheel around so many times it will create a mark on your hub. So we've got this rubber disc which sits on top like that, so when you're spinning the wheel around it won't scratch the inside of the hub. The next part is a spindle adjuster. Now, this rod, which is 13 millimeters thick, you could still use it for most wheels, but the spindle adjuster means that when you sit the wheel on top of it, it stops the movement from going from left to right when you're changing the tyre. Another key feature of the tyre changer stand is the tool adjuster holder on the sides. Now, these are for your levers, your caps, all that sort of stuff. So when obviously you work on the wheel, rather than losing your tools all over the floor, you can just pop your levers back inside, which I'll demonstrate when I change the tyre. So that's a pretty cool feature. Another cool feature of the tyre changer stand is the anti-slip rubber mounted feet. Now, when you're changing your tyre in the garage, obviously if you've got like a smooth surface on the floor, the last thing you'll be doing is chasing that tyre changer around the garage when you're trying to change the tyre. Now, with the base of these feet, it's pretty cool that once it's planted on the floor, then it won't slip around when you're trying to change that tyre, especially if you're under pressure of the levers. The last thing you want to do is the machine to be moving. So having the 4 rubber mounted feet is pretty decent to stop it from skidding around the garage floor. So without further ado, I'm going to get some gloves on. I'm going to change the front tyre and tube on the tyre changer machine. We're going to grab our front wheel. I'm going to place it on the tyre changing machine. Now, fortunately, this wheel hasn't got a disc on it, which makes life a bit easier, so it prevents us from bending a disc. But obviously, either way, if you did have a disc on it, I recommend putting the disc face side down, so it saves you from bending the disc if you use the levers. First job, we're going to slacken off the rim lock, and then going to get our tyre levers into place, and then step by step, I'll show you so on and so forth. So we're going to get a 12mm spanner and slacken off the rim lock. So using the ProWorks toolkit, we're not going to take the nut the whole way off. We're just going to undo it just enough, so it gives us enough thread to use the rim lock. So you can see we're leaving the nut in place, but just we've got enough movement when we take the levers into the tyre, it gives us space to move with the rim lock not actually coming out of the rim. So now I'm going to grab our tyre levers. So we're going to use the ProWorks black coated levers. Now, this is quite important to remove the tyres. I'm going to use some bike cleaner. You can use Fairy Liquid, any sort of soap, anything that's quite liquidy texture, just to help the bead come off the rim. Because sometimes if the tyre's been on the wheel for quite a few months or a few weeks even, it dries up, which one thing, it's hard to get the levers into place, but also it helps to get the tyre off the bead because it's quite dry. It's very friction and it's very sticky. Whereas if it's lubed up, it's easier to get off. So just use some bike cleaner. This wheel has got 1 rim lock in place. Most front wheels you use one rim lock. Sometimes they don't use any, depending on how firm the mousse or the tube is inside. But what we're going to do is we're going to have the rim lock. So from my angle, the rim lock's going to be at 12 o'clock. And we're going to put the first tie lever about 3 to 4 inches to the right. And we're going to work our way around and get the 4 tie levers into place. And then we're going to pry them one by one. Now, as I said earlier, what we're going to do here is just going to use some bike cleaner, basically just to give it a bit of lube so it gets the tie levers in easier. So I'm going to spray that on the bead of the tire, basically the whole way around. So it just helps it to soak in. Also helps clean it as well, I suppose. So as you can see, it's going to set itself into the bead. And hopefully that's going to, 1, help the lever go into place, but 2, it's going to help the tire come off of the bead because it's going to be quite sticky. So we're going to put the rim lock around to 3 o'clock. And we're going to slide the first tie lever. Now on the tie lever, you've got 2 ends. Some people use this end, but the way it's designed is the lip of this end is to go inside the tire and then obviously flick it up round. So I always use the, what I call the spoon ends, the bit more lipped ends. So get this first one into place now. And then on the second lever, I normally sort of leave about 3 to 4 fingers width between each lever, because if you go too fast, if I was to put the next lever here, the next lever here, it gets too greedy and there's too much space in between, which makes it a lot harder. So for the first sort of 3 or 4 levers, we're going to keep about 3 to 4 inches, or fingers should we say, apart. We're going to put the next one in. Same with the third. I'm only using 4 levers because it makes it easy. You can use 3 levers, but if you've got the choice to have 4, it makes life much easier. Now I've got the 4 levers in place. We're going to spin the wheel round so that the first lever is directly opposite from me. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull them down one by one, which then get the bead of the tire off, hopefully, up until the last lever. So I'm going to pull the first tire back towards us. And the second. Same with the third. And then hopefully they should come off. Now what we're going to do, we're going to keep 1 tie lever in hand. I'm going to put the other 3 in the lever holder, which is a handy compartment. I'm just going to work our way around now to get the first side of the tire off. Now the first one might be quite tight because obviously it's very tight up in here, but afterwards it should free up the further we go around. So we're going to get the tie lever roughly about here, slide it in, and now I've got rid of all the tension. This should be much easier, we hope. There we go. So now it should be pretty easy to get the rest of the tire off. I reckon this will be the last one. And you should be able to get your fingers in now, yeah, as you can see, and then pull the rest of it off like that. Now this wheel has actually got a mousse inside of it, so there's 2 different ways of doing this. If it had a tube inside, what I would suggest would be, if the tube was situated in here, I'd take the locking nut off and the tube would be deflated. What I'd do is I would then push the valve back through the rim, and I'd be able to then grab the tube in outside of this part here, and I can then remove the whole of the inner tube out from the tire. But because we've got a mousse, we've got a different technique of doing it now. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip the wheel up and over the machine. So now push the tire down so it creates more space to the side. It makes sense now. So flip the wheel over, pop it back down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to push down on the tire. Like that. Again, like I said, because it's probably been on for quite a while, it's all quite dry. If you look up in here, you can see where it's all dried up. I mean, some of the liquids come through from the soap, but being dry makes it a lot harder to get off. So now, the next step, it's quite a tricky one this, but what we're going to do is we're going to feed our lever into this side of the bead of the tire and hopefully put 3 levers in And we're going to then hopefully fold the tyre lever down, pushing the tyre off the bead, and it should eventually get rid of the whole tyre. I mean, that's how I want it to go. Whether it will or not, I don't know, but we will soon find out. Let's pop it in there. Then pulling on that one, what it will do is now create a gap, and I'm going to use the lever the opposite way. So it's going to hoik, imagine this side of the rim, the other side. This lever is going to sit like that on the rim. As I push down, it should hopefully push the tyre up and over the bead. So what we'll do is get one in place there. So that should now stay where it is. Same again, we're going to go probably, I don't know, about 4 to 5 inches to the side of it. Do the same again, get another lever in place. Like that. I think 2 should be enough for this process, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to push down on these 2 tyre levers, hopefully releasing the tyre off the bead. Look around this side so you can see it a bit better. So I'm going to do one this side, one this side, and hopefully, if I don't lose, slip off of it. What we'll see now is I've got rid of all that tension, and I can just push down the tyre. Easy enough. It's popped off, so that went quite well. I was expecting to go much worse, but that went quite well. So yeah, the benefit of using this tyre stand is that most other machines, you're bent over at an awkward angle. But that whole time I was pretty much stood up. So I must admit, it is actually really good that you don't get a bad achy back after sort of 5 to 10 minutes of changing tyres. So we're now going to flip it over, then reinstate a new tyre onto the same rim. So now we swapped our used Moose into our new ProWorks E44 motocross front tyre. It's pretty good that the Moose is still quite lubed, so shouldn't have to re-lube it. So we're just going to slide the last part of the Moose into place. Almost looks like a snake, sort of. Like that. Now with this procedure with a Moose, it's a bit different because like I said, if you had a tube, you'd have to put the tube into the tyre, put the valve through, that sort of thing. But this is demonstration from Moose, which is a lot easier. Mooses do make more sense. If you run tubes, I'd highly recommend fitting a Moose. But yeah, this is for the Moose process. Now on this tyre, it may or may not have a directional arrow. Some of them don't, some of them do. No, this one's right. So basically it means you can fit the tyre anyway, because some tyres are directional the way the knobbles are chamfered, but this one you can fit either way, so it's not a problem. So we're going to fit our rim back onto the Tribute tyre changing stand. Again, we're going to start with the rim lock by myself over here, because what we're going to do is we're going to push our weight into the tyre, keeping it in place when we work around the first side of the tyre. So pop that up on top. As you can see here, where is it? You can see where the rim lock's originally been, because the Moose has basically created a bit of a dent into it. So we'll reuse that area just so we know where to start. So we're going to slide the rim lock pretty much back into where it went before. What we're doing here is we're only putting the bottom half of the bead into place, because obviously we need to do the bottom bead first, then push the tyre down, then fit the top side of the bead. So this first process is a case of getting that bottom bead into place. So I'm going to keep my body weight up against the rim lock so it doesn't move, keeping the bead on the tyre. Now usually we use 1 or 2 levers for this. We'll try with 1 and see how we get on. What we're going to do is, you can see the bottom bead from as far as here to there, it's just coming off. So we're going to start roughly just past it, get a lever into place. Pretty straightforward. We're going to push down, hopefully that won't come back off, and then we're going to go the opposite side now, over to here, do the same thing the opposite side, like so, and then back over the other side, moving further along. Might get a bit tighter now, hopefully not. Sometimes you might need to leave a lever in place depending on how lubed up it is, because sometimes it gets quite slippery, it wants to come back off. So we're hoping that will stay in place. Get a lever over this side, get that one on there. I think one more and we should be on there, like that. So that's now the first side of the bead into place. We're just going to push down on the tire. So as you can see, some of the mousse hasn't quite sat in properly. So we're going to push our fingers and get the mousse inside of there, just so it disappears into the tire. To be fair, the lever will do this anyway, but I just like to get any excess mousse out of sight, like that. So now all the mousse is sat in place. We'll have a feel around the bottom of the bead just to make sure nothing is caught up, but it's not. So it's all good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start again, 12 o'clock from myself with the rim lock. We're going to start to the right hand side of it and work our way around. So we're going to start this side of the rim lock, finish the other side of the rim lock. We hope. And what we need to be careful of with this is the process I do it. So when you put the first tire lever into place, you want to make sure it stays there because you need to keep that rim lock pushed in. So always make sure that when you put the first lever into place, it doesn't come back up and hit you in the face. So we're going to put the first rim lock over here. Because it's a new tire, it's obviously quite stiff. So it's going to be a bit harder, I think, now. So we're going to leave this tire lever in place. Now we're going to work around this way, like so. So we get this lever into place and pull this one back. Remembering not to forget about that tie lever, because obviously when you're pulling on the tie the other side, you're creating pressure, and if that pings up and hits you in the face, it's going to hurt. So pull that tie lever back now. Now it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be quite stiff because the tire is new. So the first part is pretty easy, but it's going to get a bit tougher. He might be all right. Let's see how we go. Now I'm only using 2 levers here. Sometimes people like to use 3 or 4 levers just to make it easier, but like I said, it's a pretty used mousse. If the mousse was brand new and the tire was brand new, I'd probably be sweating my ass off now because it'd be really tight. But because it's a used mousse, it's much easier, much softer. So this isn't too bad. Well, so far so good. It's just this last part gets a bit stiff. So I'm hoping we should be all right. Again, like I said, if I had a tube in here now, it'd be a lot easier because the tube would be deflated, so there'd be no sort of volume in the tire. But because I've got a mousse inside, the mousse has filled up all the inside of that tire, so it's making it really tight. So this is now the tricky part, is we're on the last 10 to 12 inches, which means it's going to be very tight, not forgetting the rim lock has got to go into place as well. So what we're going to do is this tire lever now in place, we're going to slacken it off, which frees up that stress in there. I'm going to get another tie lever just to the side of it, and hopefully I'm going to pull this lever back at the same time pulling this one. So now that should hopefully, so that's going to pop into place, but we need to make sure the rim lock goes in with the tire, because if that pops on the bead with that rim lock in place, you got to take it back off and then get the rim lock in properly. So I'm going to push the rim lock with this part of the tie lever and use my hand. I'm going to push down on the bead. He says, like that. Perfect. So now you can see that it's sat on the bead the whole way around there. And what we're going to do is just double check that the bead's on both sides. So what you don't want to have is basically parts of the bead not sat up on top. So if you look in close, you can see this line that goes the whole way around the tire. This part here is called the bead. Now, if there was a bit of a gap, where it's sunk in a bit, the bike wouldn't roll very nice. So as you can see, the whole way around this side, the tire sat on the bead lovely. And we'll just double check the other side, just to make sure for the same thing. Bead's all intact, both sides. And not forgetting the most important part, which people sometimes forget, tighten the rim lock back up afterwards. Hasn't got to be crazy tight, because like I said, because there's a mousse in there, it's quite tight as it is, but just enough. And don't do it way tight and then cross the thread on the rim lock itself, because I've done that before. Or I snapped the rim lock after done all of this and had to remove it and do it all again. So tight enough that it's secure. So that was a pretty straightforward demonstration on how to use the ProWorks Tribute tire changing stand. Now the front tire mousse was a pretty good combination. Again, if we used a tube, might have been a bit easier, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and this tire changing stand is available on the 24MX website.